is there an extra mic? Pass around, okay. Srila Rupa Goswami begins the Nectar of Instruction by quoting a paragraph from the first canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which begins with Shrindvatam Swakata Krishna. But if we back up one verse, it says, Shushusho Shradadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevana. Syan means something comes out of it. And what arises is the urge to hear about Krishna. Not everybody has that urge, but where does it come from? Shrushrushrodhadhanasya Vasudeva Kat Syan Mahat Sevaya. When you serve the Mahat, the great souls, as is mentioned elsewhere, Mahat Sevam Dwara Mahurava Muktes, that by serving those who are considered Mahat, Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakriti mashrita, they're completely under shelter of the divine nature, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, and that's Mahat. And it's also mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Swayam Bhujaksha Kilasatvadamni Samadhi Aveshiti Chetasaike Pada Potena Mahat Kritena Kurvantiko Vatsapadam Bababdim, that the secret to success in spiritual life is to follow the Mahat, the great souls. Or it's also considered, Mahat means Krishna himself, the greatest of all souls. And those who are following Krishna, they're great souls, because they're under his protection, exclusively under his protection. So, Shrushrushro Shradadhanasya, if one gives attention, or by serving great souls, one's attention will be turned towards Krishna. And how much so? That this is the main purpose of one's life. That one wants to hear about Krishna. In fact, one lives for that. This is mentioned also by Brahma in the 10th canto, 2nd chapter, where he says, Gyane prayasa mudapasya namanta eva jivanti san mukharitam bhavadiyavartam. Stane stita ashrutigatam tanavan manovir ye prayaso jita jito pyasitais trilokyam. And the key phrase in this verse, which is well known to devotees, it's famous, his prayers, is Jivanti san mukharitam bhavadiyavartam, which means that if one jivanti just stays alive somehow or other, in order to hear about Krishna, then that's all you have to do. Nothing else necessary. No heroic measures needed. Just find a little place to rest, get a mat, put it down, or whatever you need, stane stita, whatever you're used to. Stay in that position and just add hearing about Krishna and live for that principle. Jivanti san mukharitam bhavadiyavartam. Then you'll come to the perfectional stage as indicated in Jita Jito, which means that the unconquerable, normally unconquerable Krishna gives himself to such a devotee. He becomes conquered by the love of the devotee. And how does the devotee express his or her love? It's by living for hearing. Live to hear. Bumper sticker. That Jivanti san mukhajitam bhavadiyavartam. So, Shru Shru Shro Shradadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. One does great service by serving those devotees who have a taste. And by doing that, then Shrindvatam Swakata Krishna. Now one wants to hear. And by hearing Shrindvatam Swakata Krishna, Krishna, who is Vidhunoti, the Lord within the heart, helps to sort everything out. He takes, like one who is taking the wheat out of the wheat berry. The what? We should ask somebody, for a husk. There's a little berry inside, a wheat berry, and it comes out of the husk. So he helps to separate from our lives those things which are inauspicious. Shrindvatam swakataksha, punya shravana kirtana. And as Prabhupada emphasized, you become more and more qualified just by hearing. Punya Shravana Kirtana. And Hridyantak, from within the heart, Krishna notices that the devotee is leaning into the hearing and chanting. It's also mentioned in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam in Dharma Projita Kaitavo. Sadyo Hridyavarudite Trakritibi Shushushabish Takshanat is the last part of that verse, verse number 2. It says that if you're interested in hearing about Krishna and you apply yourself to the process of hearing, then Krishna is delighted. How much so? He won't leave your heart. That's the Sadya Hridya Vrujite Trakriti Bishushushapis Takshanat. Because you're interested in hearing about Krishna, Krishna is also interested in hearing about himself. And especially when we hear Bhagavatam, we're hearing about Krishna's devotees and their devotion to Krishna. Krishna wants to hear that more than anything. So one captures Krishna by that. And as also mentioned in relationship with that verse, Sadyo Hridya Vrujite is, what is that? 11.255. Prashrujate Hridayam Chayashya Sakshat. Darir Ravasha Abhihito Pyagoganasha. Pranaya Rasanaya Drijangri Padma. Sabhagavata Bhavati Pradana Ukta. This is from the Yogendras, and they're talking about the different levels of devotees, and the topmost devotee, they say, is the one who is so inclined to hear about Krishna that because of their inclination to only want to hear about Krishna, then pranaya rasanaya, that's like a rope that ties Krishna's lotus feet in their heart, and he can't get away. That's what it means. Jita jito, the unconquerable, that nobody can catch. The yogis try to catch him and they can't even come close, Brahmasmita says. They drill their respiration, but still he remains aloof. But for those who hear Bhagavatam and the association of devotees, Krishna becomes uniquely disposed. He wants to be with those kinds of devotees, and he'll give himself to them. And so the next verse is Nashta Praisha Bhadreshu, which means that there's a noticeable clearing of anarthas, so much so that you know that I'm not the same as I was before. Nashta Praishu Abhadreshu. The inauspicious things are not there as much as they were. And then comes Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava. There is a time at which one crosses over into a new category. As we're saying, Bhaktya Sanjataye Bhaktya, one kind of bhakti turns into another kind of bhakti. And here it is. Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava Kama Lobha Dayaschaye Cheta Iter Anavidam Stitam Sattve Prasidati. Stita means to be situated somewhere. So now one's attained the next level of devotional service, noticeably. And Stitam Sattve, this Sattve, as confirmed in the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu, is not ordinary sattva, as in sattva rajas tamas, but it's Shuddha sattva. And I'll stop in just a second. But from that, we get Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction around this genre of how Krishna is attracted by our hearing and the association of devotees and how the heart becomes transformed. He quotes a verse which goes, Shuddha sattva visheshatma surya prema suryamsu samyabhak ruchi bish chitra mrishringya chit aso bhava uchate. You cross from into a regular devotional service into bhava. And what is happening? Lord Chaitanya says poetically that the spiritual world appears in your heart from this hearing process. And he says, Prema Suryamshu Samyabhak. What is it? It's a ray of sun from Shuddha Sattva, from the spiritual world. It's a ray that comes from the internal potency of the Lord, and it touches your heart. And what happens then? Mrishringya, your heart melts. And ruchi bis means then you start to experience emotions within your heart, as also mentioned in a couple of other places. For instance, evambrata swa namakirtya jatano rago chutocha hasatyato roti gayati unmadavan nrittati lokabhayaha. This is in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is a discussion about what is devotional service and what do devotees do. And one of the Yogendras, and I can't remember which one, Kavi Havi Antariksha Prabodha Pipalayana Avarhotra Chamasa Drumala or Karabhajana. Huh? It's Kavi. Sorry, Havi, it's Kavi. And he says that by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one reaches the stage of love of God. Then he becomes attracted to a particular name and form of the Lord. And then that person's heart softens. Druta means melted. And what's melting? Chitta, the heart. Druta chitta. Then the heart melts, and the person laughs, cries, and shouts. Laugh, cries, and shouts. And sometimes sings out loud in public. When we were in New Jersey, flying out to New Delhi, there was some character with headphones on, and he had a tambourine. He was walking through the airport. You could hear him from half a mile away, and I guess he was singing to something he was listening to, and he was playing his tambourine. And everyone was looking around. I was like, you're not supposed to do that here. But he was singing. Of course, I don't know what he was singing or what he was listening to exactly, but it reminded me of this verse. Lokabhayaha means everybody in the airport, everyone outside who doesn't know what you're doing. Devotee doesn't care anymore because he's got an internal life and he's so absorbed in hearing about Krishna that ray of sunshine has touched his or her heart, and now they sing out loud and they're actually interacting with Krishna from within the heart. And how does this come about? It's mentioned in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the practice of devotional service is pregnant with bhava. The practice is sadhana. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya, bhavasa sadhana vida, nitya siddhasya bhavasya, prakrityam hridi sadhyata. This means, you can mark this, every single soul has the potential for bhava bhakti. And how do you achieve it? By sadhana bhakti. You have to practice. And how much do you have to practice? A lot. Like all the time. Because there's so many other distractions. So that's what we're doing here. This is the right thing to do and the right place to do it. And why is it the right place? We go to the Briyat Bhagavatamrita. Devavrata was reminding me. I heard that we've heard how the universe, it has different levels, right? Om Bhurva Swa. So if you're in a big building, if you want to get out, you have to come down to the ground floor. Then you can get out. You can't jump out the window of the top floor. So heavenly planets, okay, it's nice up there. You may have a better facility materially, but the real place is the ground floor, which is right here in Vrindavan, and especially here at Govardhan. This is where Gopakumar found his exit directly to Goloka Vrindavan. When Narada Muni told him that if you want to take advantage of the mantra you have, and the process of Nam Sankirtan, which is the prescribed process in the Kali Yuga, you go to Vrindavan and then you do the Nam Sankirtan. So why did we all bother to come here? This is the place. You could go directly back to Goloka Vrindavan from this place, this ashram. That's why Maharaj keeps it open. See, he's already there. And what do you have to do? You do the sadhana. What's the sadhana? Smaranta smarayantascha. you get together with others and you remember Krishna, and then you cause other people to remember. And what's the best way for those who are followers of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to remember Krishna and to remember in the right mood? It's to read Prabhupada's books. There's nothing like them anywhere because they're Prabhupada. If you've ever experienced the joy of reading a book, which I do frequently, I think of how hard it is to meet a famous person. And even if you do happen to push your way through the crowd, you only get maybe a selfie or something like that. You're not going to get much more. What was that guy I met on the plane? What's his name? Shatrugna Singha. Shatrugna Singha. I met him on the airplane when we flew from Calcutta to Delhi, I think. And he took a Bhagavad Gita. And then when we got off the plane, there was a big crowd around him taking pictures. So he went up to him and he said to me, we took a picture together, and he said, I met His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He said, I sat at his lotus feet for 1 hour. And he said, that was the most important hour of my whole life. So what point was I getting to before I distracted myself? Huh? Yeah, it's hard to meet a famous person, but if that famous person writes a book, you get the best of that person. And you get to sit there in the comfort of your own home, and it's like, how am I with this person that telling me all their secrets? They put everything in the book. And so Prabhupada did the same thing. He said, if you want to know me and everything I had to say, read my books. And he personally told a few of us, I was there with Keshava Bharati Maharaj and myself and a couple other devotees in San Francisco, circa 1974. And our temple president gave the book distribution report. And then Prabhupada looked at us and he said, you must also read my books. I have not written them just for selling. I've written them for you to become pure devotee and go back home, back to Godhead. Thunderbolt. So that's what we're doing. Purposefully coming to the place on the planet, which our acharyas say, better than Radhakund in a way, because from here, we're like this to Radhakund. We're not. Anyway, we stay here at Radhakund with the Sri Krishna Maharaj and his exalted devotees, and we just hear from Prabhupada's books and we discuss Smaranta Smarayantascha. And from that sadhana, then comes the emergence of bhava. It comes naturally. So that's why we're here. At least that's my idea of it. Would you like to discuss in the next few minutes that we have left your ideas? Would you like to express yourself why you came? Do you want your money back? Do you want to ask a question to expand the conversation? Do you want me to calm down? Say something else? Yes. Nanda.
Hare Krishna, thank you very kindly for organizing this ecstatic event every year. In the purport to the 11th canto verse, the 33rd chapter, 31st verse that you were saying, that you started off with, there was the word aga, and the commentary to it said, aga refers to that which is inauspicious or sinful. So that reminded me of reading just recently in Bhaktivigyan Maharaj's book, Healing Prayers, when he analyzes the word aga in the different forms of Sanskrit, which I don't remember those details, but he was saying that aga means it leaves an indelible imprint on the consciousness. The sinful activities leave an indelible imprint on the consciousness, which compacts your consciousness smaller and smaller and impels one to do sinful activity, pushes one to do that sinful activity over and over again, and therefore become more and more entangled in materialistic life. Whereas, as you were so nicely saying, and quoting millions of references, thank you, by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, coming in contact with that transcendental sound vibration, it expands the consciousness. And even in the example that you gave of the harmonium, where the sticky key gives a hard sound to hear, by expanding the consciousness, then that apparently indelible marking from all of our past materialistic activities becomes eradicated very nicely. And just one more thing, in Nectar of Instruction, 3rd verse, there's another, Srila Prabhupada in the purport gives another comment, another sentence which confirms many of the things that we were saying, and he says, the process of bhakti is so pure and perfect that it forcibly drags one to ultimate success. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, forcibly dragging is mentioned by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his last bhajan of the Sharanagati. And he says that by chanting the holy name, he's unaware of how Krishna is transforming him. And then he says Krishna has taken him by the hand, or the holy name has taken him by the hand and guided him back to the spiritual world and introduced him to his relationship with Krishna. And as far as the diminishment of aga, that's a main topic that comes up in the first part of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because as Rupa Goswami says, when one takes to devotional service, then there are 6 byproducts that ensue. And the first one is it puts one in transcendental pleasure by taking devotional service, and he explains why we're burdened with the aga, with those sinful reactions that cause us to do inane things. But he quotes from Padma Purana and says that aprarabdha palam paptam kutam bijam palon mukham prame naiva praliyante Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. That if one's engaged in service to Krishna, Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam, then all of the stages of bhakti, all the stages of aga, of sin, even the indelible ones, the ones that are left over from previous kalpas, those are destroyed by the process of devotional service. Aprarabdha means they're not even perceivable yet. Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai, Shri Gauritai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Aprarabdha palam papam. These are all the stages of aga. And then he says, all of them, each one of those aspects is destroyed. And then there's a question, are they destroyed from the most recent and then extend to the past? Or are the past ones destroyed first and then the more recent ones destroyed? And then our Acharyas comment, it's Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and they say that it hardly matters because it's as if they're destroyed all at once. Sadhya hridya varudite trakriti bishushushu. Sadhya means like it happens immediately. I mean, in geological time, what to speak of cosmic time, it's almost immediate. You get one lifetime and can do a lot of damage to aga. It gives an example of 1,000 lotus petals, or maybe it's 10,000. 1,000 is enough for this ashram. size. I think 10,000 would be excessive. And you take a needle when you're stringing a garland and you push it through the petals. If anybody's had the pleasure of doing that, stringing garlands is immediate Shuddha Sattva. So you push the needle through. And he says, okay, you can say it went through this one first, that one second, but hey, it went through. It's done. It's cleaned out. So bhakti is the only process by which one becomes completely purified of all the stages of sinful reaction that are indelible. I also read in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali Muni, there's a commentary attributed to Vyas, and it says that yogis are very much aware of the indelible nature of aga, and so they're always careful. He said, how careful are they? They're sensitive to the perils of the material world as an eyeball. How sensitive is your eyeball? So sensitive that even just me mentioning it, you start going, let's stop talking about it. Because he says, if one has encounters with the material world, especially Hladini samskars, which means you get some spike of pleasure from the material world, he said, they're so hard to get rid of that yogis try to avoid them at all costs. But we're fortunate because we have exposure to the Hladini Shakti in chanting Hare Krishna. It's there within the mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You know the mantra, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare. If one can experience the pleasure, the Hladini Shakti, it's not that it's in high tech, there's this concept of writing code. Not a concept, it's a thing. You write code. But there's also overwriting code. So the code's there, but it gets overwritten. And I asked a lot of coders what that means. And none of them could give me a very precise answer, except for they said when you write a new code, the other code just falls apart and the other one becomes prominent. So in our practice of devotional service, we overwrite the bad codes and the aga that we've taken in from before, and the other one, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, just becomes cleaned out. We have a couple more minutes. Comments, questions? Yes. Patita Pavana.
Hare Krishna. I was thinking of a verse in relation to just staying alive and hearing the glories of the Lord. And it was 10:14:3.
That's Jnane Prayasam.
Yeah. And
that's the one I quoted, right?
I believe, yeah.
I quoted that. Jnane Prayasam Urapasya Namante
Yeah.
Jivanti San Bukaritam. That's Jivanti means somehow or other stay alive, so you could hear this. Don't miss it. Go ahead.
And then in the commentary it describes how we conquer Krishna by hearing about him, and it says, there was Tano Van Manobi indicate that the pure devotees of Lord Krishna conquer his body, words, and mind. Lord Krishna's body is conquered because he always remains by the side of his pure devotees. Lord Krishna's words are conquered because he always chants the glories of his devotees, and Lord Krishna's mind is conquered because he always thinks about his loving devotees.
Wow. Krishna is so inclined towards his devotees. When Krishna went to meet Shrutadev and Baulashva, he took a chariot ride and he invited the sages because they always want to be around Krishna. Generally, they don't ride in cars or chariots, but when Krishna asks you, you jump on. They jumped on the chariot. Where are you going? To see my devotees. And as Krishna passed along the roadway, millions of souls came to see him pass. And although he was going at the speed of the mind, he made individual contact with every one of them. That's his expertise. He's attentive to every soul. And then when he came to the Mithila township, he met with both Shrutadev and Baulashva, but he did it simultaneously. each one of them thought, oh, he just came to see me, because although they came out to greet him, he went off with each one of them separately. And not just Krishna, all the sages as well. Each one greeted him in the way that they could. Shrutadev was a humble person, had just a little water and a straw mat he could offer to everybody, massage Krishna's feet. And Balalashva was a king, so he could offer kingly opulence. And they both glorified him. When Shrutadev was glorifying Krishna, Krishna stopped him. And he said, stop glorifying me. There are all these sages here. They're more important than I am. You glorify them. As a great lesson, as it comes in the question that Parvati asked the Lord Shiva about what's the best kind of worship that one can do. And he said, Tadiya. Those things in relationship to Krishna. And who's most dear? It's the devotees. So if we serve the devotees, Shushu Shosharananasya Vasudeva Katavrichi Syan Mahat Sevayabi Prapunya Tirtana Shevana. And we're very careful not to denigrate devotees. It's an urge that might arise within the heart. We're specifically asked by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to avoid that. And we hear in the association of devotees, then Krishna does all the heavy lifting. Not all the heavy lifting. We have to get here and we have to stay in the heat and we have to apply ourselves to the process. But then Krishna becomes pleased, and when he's pleased, he uplifts us from within our hearts. So we're so very grateful to be here. Thank you for holding this. Some people call it a palace. I call it a fortress. Because a fortress means a place where you're guarded against the material energy. Palace sounds like what are you doing in a palace? Although it could be that also. We can spin it another way. But the idea of a fortress is we have to build a fortress so that we're not affected by aga. But more than that, we know and have received the antidote to those indelible impressions that come into the heart and cause us to take one birth after another in the material world. And the antidote is Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So today we're starting with the Madhya Lila. I took a look at it. We're going to ask one of our engineers to count all the pages this morning and find out how many active sessions we have. And then we'll calculate how many pages we have to read a day to finish the Madhya Lila. Okay? Your homework. How many? 200 pages a day? No problem. You already figured it out? Around 200? Okay. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Giriraj Maharaj, Shri Shri Gaurnitai, and all the residents of the Bhaktivedanta Ashram headed by C. Krishna Maharaj, if you so desire, please empower us to read the entire Madhya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita in a mood of service to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who said that he wrote it for us. So let us enter deeply within it, giving our full attention or as much as possible. And in that way, find happiness in our service to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please say Hare Krishna. Vanchakalptarishcha kripa sindhavevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah nanta koti vaishnaviniki jai. That was a long reach for the water. I looked back a few times, but I thought it was a little hard to grab.